In today's video, I'm going to simplify Roth conversions and reveal the costly Roth conversion mistakes that drain thousands in unnecessary taxes from retirement accounts. I'm also going to talk about some of the myths and errors that I made in my early career before I discovered the right approach. Through analyzing hundreds of conversion strategies, digging through academic research, and working directly with clients, I've identified 4 critical blunders that even experienced investors will make when they're moving their retirement funds to tax-free territory. If you're new to the channel, my name's Justin. I own a financial planning firm in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, where we help retirees all across the country make smart financial decisions. That's exactly why I'm making today's video, to show you the hidden conversion pitfalls that nobody really talks about and why traditional conversion advice often can backfire expensively, and how to implement a strategic framework that will maximize your after-tax retirement wealth. So let's dig right into it. Okay, so the first blunder is what I call the lump sum conversion trap. And now some people will think, well, why not just rip the Band-Aid off and convert my entire traditional IRA or pre-tax 401k to Roth all at once? You know, it sounds reasonable, then I can just get it over with and I don't have to worry about it. But that's the exact kind of move that can lead you paying a lot of money in unnecessary taxes and really burden your retirement plan. So if you convert your entire traditional IRA in 1 year, you risk launching yourself into the 35 or 37% federal tax bracket. And then when you consider state taxes, depending on what state you live in, you could very well be well over 40% in total taxes. And that kind of negates the core idea behind doing a Roth conversion in the first place. So the main idea behind it is actually pretty simple. You're just paying tax now at a rate that's equal or lower to the rate that you expect to be in the future. You're essentially realizing tax now at a rate that you know and can control and plan for, than taking the risk of paying higher taxes later on. And so if you're converting now at a higher rate than you'll pay later, you're just defeating the whole purpose, and you're essentially just giving money away unnecessarily in taxes. I'd say in most cases, not all, but most, converting above the 24% bracket really starts to negate much of the benefit, unless you have extremely compelling reasons, like maybe you have high estate tax exposure, really big RMDs, very long time horizons, or maybe you're more concerned with the taxes that your heirs will pay instead of taxes in your lifetime. So there are always some exceptions. You always have to make sure this strategy is tailored to you. But I'd say for most people, once you move past that 24% bracket, then the return on the tax cost starts to drop a lot. And this is exactly what Richenstein and Meyer talked about in their paper on tax-efficient withdrawal strategies. They showed that essentially what we call chunking out the Roth conversions, or strategically converting just enough to fill up the brackets, can save over 6 figures in lifetime taxes. And so that's why the smarter strategy is spreading your conversions over multiple years. And so their research found that ultimately higher income households should consider making Roth conversions in their first few retirement years, before those RMDs begin and before tax rates can potentially increase. And now this paper was obviously written before the current tax legislation, and they were assuming that tax brackets would revert back to where they were pre-2017. However, we don't know if tax rates will go back to being higher again in the future, so that still makes Roth conversions compelling. And so let's just use a simple example. Let's say you have a $1 million traditional IRA and you decide to convert all of it in 1 year and rip the Band-Aid off. That pushes your taxable income to well over $1 million, putting you into that 35 or 37% or higher tax bracket. If you instead had spread it over 3 to 5 years, let's say, you could have kept most of it or all of it within the 24% bracket. That is a difference of over $100,000 in taxes just from timing. And so the takeaway from this is that Roth conversions usually only makes sense if you expect to be in the same or higher tax bracket later on. If you're paying more now than you ever would in retirement, then that's not really optimization, that's just voluntary overpayment. And so now that we've talked a little bit about why lump sum conversions can create unnecessary tax costs, let's examine another critical mistake that silently drains retirement accounts. All right, and this is the one I really want to talk about, because this blunder is a big one. I call this one the retirement dollar depletion myth. So there is a common rule of thumb that says to never use your IRA dollars to pay the taxes when you're doing a Roth conversion. Make sure you always pay it with outside cash. And now, while it's technically true that paying taxes outside the IRA is a lot more efficient, it's not always realistic. So let's be honest, most retirees don't have tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands in outside cash just sitting there waiting to pay taxes with. And if they do, they're not going to want to use a lot of it up just to pay taxes with to do a Roth conversion. It doesn't go down well psychologically in my experience. It feels like a hit. It feels like almost like a punch to the gut. So a lot of people just don't want to part with that much cash to pay taxes with. And yes, it's definitely mathematically optimal to pay conversion taxes with outside money because of course it's keeping more of your money in that Roth IRA and compounding for tax-free growth. But that does not mean that using your IRA dollars to pay the taxes with is necessarily a mistake. Research from Vanguard's paper, A Better Approach to Roth Conversions, shows that even when taxes are paid from the IRA itself, Roth conversions can still be advantageous over the long run. The key is just having enough time and a longer time horizon for the Roth to recover that initial tax cost and keep compounding. And I find here's where people get tripped up with this. And I call it the illusion of the larger IRA. So let's just use 1 million, for example, to make the math easy. That $1 million traditional IRA, it isn't actually $1 million. So a portion of it already belongs to the IRS. So what you really own is just the after-tax value. Whether you pay the tax now or later, that chunk is actually gone either way. You could think of it like, or call it Schrodinger's IRA, right? It's already smaller. The tax is already gone. You just haven't realized it yet. You just get to choose when you realize those taxes. And so what I think holds people back is, let's say you converted $100,000, you're at the 24% tax bracket, and you pay that $24,000 in taxes from the IRA. Well, it feels like a loss because now your Roth IRA balance is smaller, the amount that you converted, right? But all you've done is you've just made the taxes visible now instead of paying it later at an unknown rate. Your true after-tax wealth is the exact same either way at the time of conversion. Whether you convert and pay now or you keep it and pay later, you're just changing the timing. That's it. And what you're really doing is you're just locking in known tax rates now, let's say 22 to 24%, versus risking exposure to higher marginal brackets later on in retirement, let's say 32 to 35% if you have large RMDs and you factor in Social Security and other income. And what you're really doing is you're reducing what we call taxable income volatility later, and you're keeping your adjusted gross income and modified adjusted gross income under those IRMA thresholds so you don't have to pay those higher Medicare premiums later on. And one big benefit that some people don't really think about is that Roth avoids taxation for you and your heirs. So some people might have concerns about doing a Roth conversion, paying the taxes from the IRA and thinking, well, it's going to take longer to break even. It might take a little bit longer to break even for you, but if one of your concerns is not leaving a big tax bomb or tax bill for your heirs, then that part may not even matter to you. It still makes sense to do the conversion. And so yes, if you can pay taxes with outside money, go ahead and do it. But if you can't, don't let that stop you from doing a Roth conversion if the math makes sense. The tax drag is definitely real, but so is the long-term benefit of shifting growth to a Roth. The key is smart modeling, not rigid rules, and tailoring the strategy appropriately. And I think really we need to stop making Roth conversions so overly complicated. The simple version of it is you're just paying tax today on a known amount at a rate that you know, can plan for, and can control, so that you never have to pay tax on those dollars or on the future growth ever again, and you reduce the risk of actually having to pay higher taxes later. That's it. That's the whole reason it works. Another example, let's use 100,000 again. You want to convert 100,000. If you use the IRA dollars to pay the 24,000 in taxes, again, assuming we're at the 24% tax bracket, then only 76,000 actually goes into the Roth IRA. If you use cash from your bank account to pay the tax, then the full 100,000 is in the Roth IRA and can obviously grow and compound a little bit faster. Now, over 20 years at, let's say, 7% growth, that's a $40,000 difference. But even if you don't have outside cash to pay the taxes with, converting that 76,000 is still better than doing nothing, because you've actually controlled when you pay the taxes at the known rate now versus unknown, possibly higher rates later on. And so now that you understand some of these conversion mistakes, If you have any questions or you're curious, fill out the questionnaire in the first link in the description beneath the video. I will send you back a personalized video analyzing your situation and showing exactly how you can implement a tax optimized strategy that could end up saving you a good bit of money over time. Okay, the third blunder, the waiting game fallacy. I'll convert next year when my tax situation changes, or I think I'll be in a lower bracket next year, so I'll wait, or I'll wait till the market drops and then I'll do a conversion. Some of those may sound familiar. Maybe you've thought that a few times, but I think that's the most common form of Roth procrastination that I hear, and it's almost always wrong. In many cases, the lower bracket never ends up materializing. Maybe somebody delays a year, then another, then all of a sudden, oh, there's pension income coming in from a spouse, or suddenly you're 73 with RMDs and you have a bigger account balance, you have less flexibility, and then of course trying to time the market hoping that it drops so you can do a conversion. I won't even get started on how impossible that is. That's just not even something that I would recommend anybody try to do. If the market happens to drop, then that definitely can work in your favor, but I wouldn't wait around just hoping the market drops and then try and do it. Plus, every year that you don't convert is another year that you miss out on tax-free growth in the Roth. So that's a compounding opportunity that's lost forever. Going back to the Richenstein and Meyer study, so they found that higher income households that follow a conventional withdrawal strategy and try to take money from their non-retirement accounts first, essentially keeping their taxable income at zero, then they'll definitely be in very, very low tax brackets, obviously. However, during most of their retirement years, when funds start to be withdrawn from their tax-deferred accounts, like their pre-tax IRAs or 401ks, they will be in the 25% or higher tax bracket. So then these higher income households that follow this conventional withdrawal approach, they waste the opportunity in those first few retirement years to convert the pre-tax funds to after-tax funds in the Roth at low rates. And that reminds me of somebody that I worked with years ago who we talked about the strategy and they kept saying, well, maybe I'll do it next year. I'll think about it. They just couldn't wrap their heads around the math, and it felt to them like they're losing money by having to pay taxes from the account because it's obviously reducing the value of the account, like I talked about earlier. But by the time they were ready, their RMDs were starting, 2 sets of Social Security had kicked in, and then they were locked into the 32% tax bracket. If we had started this way earlier, when they were only in the 22% tax bracket, they could have moved over $500,000 to Roth at a much, much lower tax rate. And now understanding this waiting game fallacy is essential, but equally important is avoiding the deadline confusion that can trip some people up with this. And that leads me to the last blunder, is the deadline confusion error. So there's a technical mistake, and this sounds pretty simple, but believe it or not, a lot of people will miss this. This trips people up every year because Roth IRA contributions follow the April 15th tax deadline, right? If you make a contribution to IRA, traditional IRA or Roth IRA, you have till April 15th to contribute for the prior year. However, Roth conversions do not follow that schedule. They must be completed by December 31st. So no grace period. If you confuse the two and you try to convert in January or February for the prior year, you're out of luck. And this is why I think smart planning and smart planners will start early. I like to look at this somewhere around September, October. I think that's a prime time to evaluate your income because you have a pretty good gauge on what your income's going to be because you're already 3/4 of the way through the year. So it's very unlikely that surprises will come in. So you can evaluate your income, you can model this out pretty well, and then you can get it as accurate as possible before the end of the year. If you wait till November or December, in my experience, it's probably just not going to get done. And so now that we've talked a little bit about how Roth conversions can fail, let's look at a strategic conversion framework that you can use to make the most of this. So now that you know what not to do, here's what works. So number one, if you don't have one already, make sure you get your Roth IRA open now. So if you have no Roth, you obviously can't do a conversion. You need a place for the funds to go into. And then number two, you want to decide your quote chunking strategy or how you want to do this year by year. So work with your tax advisor if you have one or financial planner if you have one to figure out what your current marginal tax bracket is, how much room you have in the brackets to convert before jumping to the next. So doing this properly, you definitely don't want to, you want to get it as accurate as you can so you don't have to waste dollars going into the next tax bracket. So trying to get that dialed in accurately is super important. Number three, try to pay taxes if you can, or at least some of the taxes if you can, from outside cash. But do not stress over it or let it stop you if you don't have outside cash to pay the tax with. Remember, whether you pay the taxes from the IRA now or pay it later, your after-tax wealth is still already the same. You're just realizing the taxes at a different time period. Number four, last but not least, plan this across multiple years. Think big picture. The best results come from a 3 to 7 or more year Roth strategy, not a single year fix. So this is ideally something that you want to map out year by year. Try to stay in the optimal tax bracket for you, save as much as possible, and get a good strategy planned out. So now that we've gone over all the critical Roth conversion mistakes that can silently drain retirement accounts and how to implement an optimized strategy, you can hopefully use this information to maximize your after-tax retirement wealth. And if you want some personalized guidance on creating a tax optimized conversion strategy for your situation, just click the link below the video, fill out the quick questionnaire. I will send you back a customized video analyzing your circumstances and showing you exactly how to implement a tax strategy that might be suitable for you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one.